Hello. This video will be on how to mix major and minor pentatonic scales. Most of music is based on the interplay between major and minor tonalities. Even dominant 7 sounds can be thought of as minor as well. So there's a lot of different ways in which minor and major, or the chords that correspond to major and minor keys, are disguised. So they may not obviously sound as minor, but major and minor are always being used alternately to create the contrast in music. Now, most of that contrast is produced by the minor third and the major third. Here we see G minor and G major. So we have two different types of sounds, minor and major, and if we can move from minor to major, then we can also move in the opposite direction, from major to minor. So both of these are very effective. The first thing that needs to be learned on the guitar is major and minor pentatonic scales in the root positions. So I'm including the notes that correspond to the 4-finger range. 4 fingers equals 4 frets. But the G major pentatonic theoretically moves from low G on the low E string to high G on the high E string. So what makes a scale sound in one key or the other is the starting note and the ending note. But this is only foundational or conceptual, because when we actually improvise or compose music, we hardly ever play the notes of the major and the minor pentatonic scale in their proper sequences, from low to high or ascending, or from high to low or descending. Instead, the notes are treated as groups of notes that are combined in different ways. And the different ways that they are combined is through different spacing, different intervals. Right? So rather than playing 1, 2, 3, 5, which are notes that are borrowed from the major scale, I could play 1, 6, 3, 5. Different things like that. So even though the notes are being mixed up, aren't being played in their proper sequence, it's still identifiable as a major pentatonic sound, because the 6th note, major 6th, corresponds to the major tonality. Okay, but I got off a little bit there. First thing to think about is major and minor. And then the major and minor triads, of course, which are exemplified by the bar chords. Think only, though, about the first 3 strings, because these 3 are the power chord of rock and roll, or the G5 chord, 1, 5, 8 octave, which is enclosing the 5th interval of rock and roll. So regardless of whether we're playing a major chord, G major or G minor, the 6th, 5th, and 4th strings are always just playing the ambiguous power chord. Now I say ambiguous because just the perfect 5th in combination with the octave sounds neutral. It's not major nor minor, so it has no real personality. It's hollow and empty sounding, let's say. So when we play power chords, this enables us to treat the chords as if they were in major and minor keys. Now there's other factors involved, like the movement of the chords, which we don't need to get into in this video. But because I use flat third and flat seven here in this example, one can conclude that this is actually in a minor key. But minor and major keys and the chords that correspond to major and minor keys are combined in different ways. This is called parallel major and parallel minor. G major and G minor are a good example of parallel major and parallel minor. So if someone's playing just a G power chord, you can play either major, G and B, or 1 and 3, 6th and 3rd strings, or minor, G and B flat, 6th and 3rd strings. Because there's no intervallic conflict. There's no rub, like dissonant rub between major and minor. But if I'm playing, let's say, a G7 chord, G dominant 7, that's a major chord, right? Then adding a minor note over that will sound dissonant, and incorrect actually. But this dissonance is what is the generator of rock and roll and blues music. This is like the Hendrix chord. So we isolate major and minor sounding at the same time. The B corresponds to G major, and the G minor, B flat here on the 6th fret is G minor. So when you play major and minor at the same time, it just sounds wrong, right? But it depends on the other intervals, right? So when you play the whole chord, it gets neutralized. It starts to sound a little bit different. So one of the main staples, let's say, or foundations of blues and rock music is to play minor scales over major chords. The blues, there's a major blues, G7, C9. So all these dominant chords, 7th chords and 9th chords, are all major chords. G7, another way of saying G major with a dominant 7th, which we know is not the same as G major 7, and then C9 is another way of saying C dominant 7, D9, which is D7, then C major. So the blues is composed of 3 major chords. Now, of course, there is a minor blues as well, but the minor blues doesn't offer us the same contrast that the major blues, or the standard blues form that uses the 7th, aka major chords, provides us with. So, when you play minor over major, you get those blue notes, the blue sounds, which is sad, right? Minor sounds are usually equated with sadness. Now we have flat 3, flatted 3rd, flatted 7th. Both of these are blue tones that are in the minor pentatonic scale. They're blue tones because these notes are not in the major scale. So we're technically breaking the rules with rock and blues because we're playing flatted 3rd against major 3rd, and then we're playing flatted 7th against an invisible major 7 that is in the major scale. So you can see that the tones of the scale also have an effect on what's being played over certain chords. So in other words, a major chord implies all the major scale tones. Minor chord implies all the minor scale tones, which include, of course, major pentatonic and minor pentatonic.